The Irrational Confidence Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and the season is over. The national champion has been decided. It is again the Ohio State Buckeyes rolling up on Notre Dame, completing one of the most impressive runs in all of college football, maybe the most impressive run going through a 12-team playoff. I'm joined by my co-host who has to deal with me for another 9 months until next college football season comes by. My co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Congratulations on your national championship. It was a good run by Ohio State. I wouldn't call it the most impressive run of all time. I mean, they ran a gauntlet. They did well, but we all predicted Ohio State would be playing for the national championship back in April. So they had a weird road to get there. They got there, and they did it in dominating fashion. All in all, very impressive. Congratulations. And on to 2025.
On to 2025, but not before we celebrate what has happened on the field in 2024.
Let's not say we celebrate. You celebrate.
I celebrate. Yeah,
you and Drew and your dad can celebrate.
Yeah, you got to have your moment in the sun. Now it's our turn to bask in the glory as freezing temperatures are dropping all over the country. I thought about this a lot, Fresh, and I spent a lot of time last night thinking about what I was going to come on here and say, what I was going to talk about. And I had jotted down some notes and then I kind of scribbled those out and went back to it. How far this team has come. And I know people are going to point out a lot of different things. And you're going to say, oh, you were the favorite and you were picked to win the national title. Oh, you spent all this money on NIL as well. And people I love how people are like, oh, they spent $20 million, that all these teams that are in the playoffs spent $15 to $23 million as well, acting like other teams aren't doing it. But I looked at where this team came throughout this entire journey, and that's why I think back to this and saying it was such an impressive run in my eyes. I go back to where we were feeling not only in the last Saturday in November, but also on that Saturday in October. When you go over to Eugene, you lose in heartbreaking fashion. And we came on the show and we talked about the letdown of that type of game. And that's the type of game you expect to happen. You expect games where you have two equally matched teams go head to head. It comes down to the final minute. It comes down to a coach exploiting a rule at the time to their advantage. Perfectly legal, not complaining about that. But, that loss, and I thought at the time that maybe it was that loss that galvanized this team. They rolled through the rest of their Big Ten schedule. You take a look at how they played up against Indiana when they came into town. And then on top of that, the last weekend in November, all of a sudden, they lose to the Wolverines. And I was thinking about this. Does this national title happen without that loss Thanksgiving weekend? And I don't necessarily know if it does, because I think that loss, with everything that went into it, with how bad they played in that game, with how everyone in the world was doubting them. Like, after that weekend, people kind of had written them off. And if we were in a 4-team playoff, they wouldn't have had this opportunity at all. They will talk about the players only meeting. They come in. Tennessee fans are saying that they're going to take over the shoe, and there's a large population of volunteer fans in there. You got guys making Neil and North shirts over there. And all of a sudden, Ohio State just kind of picks themselves off the mat. It's like a prize fighter taking a hit and going down. And all of a sudden you see in the movies where, there's just a little bit of blood coming out. They wipe off that blood and they say, no one makes me bleed my own blood, and wind up throwing haymakers left and right. You take a haymaker to Tennessee, you take a haymaker to Oregon, you get revenge of that loss back in October. you see this team completely galvanized by that loss to the Wolverines. And then you go against Texas. Texas, a team that, again, we talked early in the season. There are 5, maybe 6 teams in the entire country that can match up talent for talent wise with Ohio State. Texas, Georgia, 2 teams in there we talked about. We talked about a team like Oregon could match up with the Horses with Ohio State. You talk about maybe, again, Notre Dame, I think if they were fully healthy, would have probably could make a point that they had some horses that could match up with them. But you go up against Texas, you beat the Longhorns in Texas, in Dallas with the Cotton Bowl, and then you pull off this win against Notre Dame for it. For everyone who doubted Ryan Day, and I will say this, that was kind of the thing I'll be the first to admit, I had my doubts, but I kind of stayed steadfast with him. I thought that he still was the best person for the Ohio State job. Will Howard played like absolute garbage and during that weekend in Thanksgiving and wound up turning it around. You know, Jeremiah Smith showing how great he is. Jack Sawyer, JTT, this entire defense coming together. I still think right now Davidson Igbinosa is being flagged as we speak, probably for the national title game trophy ceremony. I'm sure he committed some sort of penalty because it seemed like every single game there's like 5 or 6 penalties called on that guy. But again, that's why I look at this. And I look back to the team that won in 2014, a team that was the first team ever to win the 4-team playoff. And the adversity that team went through, down to their 3rd-string starting quarterback, having to blow out a Wisconsin team to get into the field. A lot of people will talk about, we forget TCU and Baylor were out of that field. We're supposed to be in the field. Ohio State goes 52-0 on Wisconsin to get in there. 3rd-team playoff. You have to go through Alabama and Nick Saban in a slugfest of the game, and then you boat race the Heisman Trophy winner, Marcus Mariota. And I looked at this going, a lot of people, I think like, okay, you'll roll over versus Tennessee. All right, you didn't roll over versus Tennessee, but man, Oregon's going to give you a game. And then, you beat Tennessee, and Tennessee really wasn't the pride of the SEC right now. Well, okay, you got to face Texas, who played for the SEC title game. Oh, you beat Texas. Well, Notre Dame's going to have something for you. And that's where I think the run is so remarkable. The fact that you are the first team to do this, you're the first team to go through all 4 games, that's the impressive part to me. That's the thing that means that this is one of the most impressive runs, because it's not about like, again, LSU in 2019, I think is probably maybe the best team I've ever seen offensively. Georgia in 21 is probably the best team I've ever seen defensively. And I would probably say either one of those Miami teams or USC teams in the early 2000s was probably the best team I've ever seen that's complete. With all of those things being said, the fact that you're the first one to do this, people will remember the one that is first. We remember Neil Armstrong, we remember Buzz Aldrin to be the first guys to walk on the moon. Yes, other astronauts are going to do it. Other people are going to do it. But the fact and the manner that they did it, this was pure cinema. This was pure enjoyment for Ohio State fans. Guys, I tell you got to savor these moments. There's going to be people that bring you down. I see all the nonsense that's out there. Oh, well, you got to do this. It's not the way of college football anymore. It's not the way of college football anymore. This is the new era of college football. Yeah, it sucks. You're going to be able to lose to your rival. But as someone said, Ohio State players get gold pants. I'd rather take a golden trophy than gold pants.
Does that mean the rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State doesn't mean a dang thing anymore? Or only means something to the team that's the underdog? Because obviously it showed that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter playing for a conference championship. It doesn't matter if you beat your rival. The only time it matters is the underdog. Ohio State, for all that, not all, the flag planting, who cares about that anymore? It doesn't matter. Michigan, you beat Ohio State, congratulations. It doesn't matter. Is that going to hurt the regular season over time, where the playoff now has become like the NFL, where the regular season games, as long as you have seeding or you're in, it does not matter what happened or who you lost to. Like losing to NIU, we had a team that lost to Northern Illinois.
Right.
They were playing for a national championship. We had a team that lost to their 7-5 Michigan team, who, in all intents and purposes, had no business being on the field. Those two teams played right now. Ohio State win by 20. Because I think the coaches actually screwed the players in that game. But it just shows the regular season does not matter as much right now. It's can you survive the regular season and have your team ready to rock and roll when the playoffs matter.
I think
so when the playoffs matter, that's all that matters. Getting to the regular season with surviving physically and having the depth. If Judkins or Henderson are beat up going into the playoffs, is the third string running back going to be able to handle it? If Will Howard's beat up, is a young quarterback for Ohio State that'll lead that team? Who knows? We can't go back and play that game. But the team is ready to rock and roll. They had obviously motivation to lose in Michigan, which maybe served right. But to play in that game, in the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And
yes and no.
You're going to see rivalry games. The playoff is the only thing that matters. The playoff is the only thing that matters going forward. And Ohio State played it perfectly. They navigated. They got where they had to get in the end. The NFL is the same way. And the college football has actually become much more like the NFL now, the 12-team playoff. The regular season is all about just jockeying the seat and get your foot in the door. If you don't have to play for conference championship, you just got to get yourself in that 12-team field and roll from there. And then play your best ball as the season ends. Play your best football. We've complained about September. Man, this team sucks, or they don't look very good, or they're maybe overrated. It doesn't matter how you look in September. It matters how you look right now in December and January. And that's literally the way the season is now going to be transpired. We cannot be overreacting going forward in August and September how the team plays. Did they win or lose? That is all that matters. In October, did they win or lose? That's all that matters. Because in the end, you have to get in the 12-team playoff. If you play a conference championship game outside the Big Ten and the SEC, if you lose, you're probably out. The ACC, I think the SNU being where they were, they kind of drew it up. But in the future, I don't think that's going to be the case. It's going to be you're going to be playing for your lives. Just got to get yourself in the playoff and roll from there. Ohio State played it perfectly. Yes, they motivated, but the where we've gone from Ryan Day being on a scolding hot seat to being a national champion. The fact that we got all preseason talk, and you've heard from multiple sources that Ryan Day had to do 2 of 3 things to keep his job. Either, beat Michigan, play for win a conference championship, or win a national championship. Well, he's 1 out of 3, but he won the biggest one, so he saved himself a job. He even playing for the national championship, the way the team got himself there. If they had squeaked by Tennessee or squeaked by Oregon, won by some fluky player by luck, and didn't win the national title, questions would probably still be out there. But the way they dominated when it matters, compared to where we were Thanksgiving Saturday to where we are now, he has, I think, he'll get a contract extension. He'll be in great shape. He did what he had to do. He got the players to score and touchdowns when it mattered. He got the players to produce when it mattered. Will Howard, great transfer player. Judkins, great transfer player. Jeremiah Smith, obviously an amazing wide receiver, top 5 overall recruit coming in. Caleb Downs, an amazing transfer player. They were able to fill in the holes on a roster that was already in very, very, very good shape. And they took advantage of it. They came together and they made it happen. And on top of it, coaches got out of the dang way. Chip Kelly didn't do stupid stuff. Jim Knowles called the defense the right way. And you know what? Ryan Day, he said, you know what, guys, just go out there and play football. Do what you do. Make plays. We have the talent on this roster to overcome some deficiencies, overcome a turnover here or there, and make things happen. Notre Dame had to play perfect. Tennessee had to play perfect. Oregon, they probably didn't have to play perfect, but they had the talent. In Texas, they didn't have to play perfect, they played pretty well. But in most games, Ohio State, if you showed up, they were going to be in great shape, and they did what they had to do, and they did it in dominating fashion. I mean, people who said that they were doubting Ohio State, if you went right back now and put money and looked at all the bets put on Ohio State to win versus Tennessee, versus Oregon, versus Texas, and obviously last night versus Notre Dame, I got a feeling that most of the bets and most of the numbers, most of the money and most of the bets were on Ohio State because we know they had the horses in that stable. They had the horses in that barn. It was not about lack of talent. It was this team getting themselves in the right mindset and just being allowed to play. If we go back to that Michigan game, Ryan Day and the coaches got in the way. They started trying to out-physical and out-muscle and out-toughen his Michigan when they had the players to just go ahead and dominate them when they had to. And they sort of overthought in some situations with Oregon. They learned from those mistakes. And it has paid off. tenfold for the Buckeyes. Very impressive. They did what we all expected them to do: be there in Atlanta, ready to go, and they took advantage of it. And it shows. The Jimmies and Joes, not the X's and O's. You got guys who play football. They will show up when it matters on game day.
Right. I think you're right, but off on one point you made. I think that the rivalry games will mean less if, and again, I think there's an if that comes into play with it. If you're in the situation like Ohio State was, I think that if you didn't win the national title this year, I think the rivalry game would have actually meant even more in this situation. But because you win the national title, it discounts the rivalry. So it's like a scale. Again, for an example, Alabama. Alabama's going to be pissy that they didn't make the playoff, but at least they can look back and say, well, they'll sit there, puff out their chest, well, we beat Auburn, because they didn't need that opportunity, or they didn't have that opportunity. I think, again, even Georgia is going to say, well, we beat Florida for the utmost umpteenth time this season. Yeah, Carson Beck's elbow was ripped to shreds. We lost that there. And again, what would have happened for that?
I think the rival is watered down. It's still like, yes.
Right. I'm not saying
Georgia. Yeah, we beat all the rivals. We beat Georgia Tech in an 8 overtime game, but it just feels like we even won the SEC, and it still feels like a deflated season.
Right.
And in the past years, you'd be like, well, we won the league. It's fantastic. Like, it's just like, it's but because the playoff is so much more.
But I think that's been happening since we've been to the 4-team playoff. I don't think that that's a thing that is only for this year in the 12-team. I think that's been happening for since the 4-team playoff. Because you think back, again, I'll give you another point. The Ohio State loses to the Wolverines the year that they played Georgia and give Georgia the toughest game of the year. And that year, the rivalry game should have kept them out of the 4-team playoff, but it didn't. I think this has been a gradual thing over time that has build up. And I don't think it started in just this year. I think this started all the way back in 2014.
It makes it worse this year because now there's 4 games for a national title. It's a whole separate season. I mean, it's January 21st and we're talking about the Natty. In the past years, it would be the 10th, or even, traditionally, we talk on January 2nd. It just feels that's, you talk about in November, Thanksgiving. What was that, 9, 10, 11 weeks ago at this point?
52 days ago.
So almost 2 months. It feels like forever ago. And that just shows you the delay of, we've already completely forgotten about the regular season. Right. We went through championship weekend and 4 rounds of a playoff, and we're like, who cares anymore? Like, that is not going to have a stinging, layer of pain, unless Ohio State did not play for a national title.
Right.
The fact that they even played for a national title kept that as a good spot, but it feels lost. We've gone so far away from that regular season actually truly mattering. If you can get through with 2 losses and be 10-2, you're in the playoff, and then the season really kicks in. In the NFL, no one really starts playing until December. Like, when you get to Thanksgiving in the NFL, that's when the season really starts. Up to that point, you're kind of like, well, you know what? We win some, we lose some. No one really cares about losses in the NFL. As a fan base, you're mad, but you're like, it's a loss. We'll move on to next week, and we'll shake it off. And the NFL is about parity, and right now, to an extent, losses aren't going to have as much of an impact. We even show it doesn't matter who you lost to. It's just 10-2, not 11-1. You're in the playoff, and you're good to go. And then the games actually really matter. But
losses, on the flip side, they do matter to an extent. It's not an end-all, be-all one.
How many 2-loss teams? How many 2-loss teams made it? We have a 2-loss national champion.
Right. But you would have had 2-loss national champion for every single team.
Notre Dame only had 1 loss.
Oh, Notre Dame had 1. I'm sorry. Notre Dame would have had 1, and Oregon would have been undefeated. Yeah. So, but again, the majority of the field is 2-loss teams. And again,
you look at seasons like that.
Well, but I still think it's pretty with how much parity, and I think this goes to parity though, with how much parity that's going on in the entire country, is you take a look at a team like Ole Miss, 3 losses on the season by a grand total of, I believe, what they say, 13 points, 14 points, someone in that range. That means the regular season does matter to an extent. I think everything is within absolutes. It's not within absolutes. Right, they didn't. And that's rightfully so. I think that there is a kind of a double-edged sword that we're still searching through and trying to find the sweet spot in this. I think that it's going to take time. I think this is not going to be a 1 year where it's going to be everything is going to be fixed. I think that every fan could say on one side of the coin or another. Right now, I'm on cloud 9, man. Yeah. This is the greatest team. This is one of the greatest runs I've ever seen. This is impressive. To beat 4 teams like this in 4 weeks is impressive.
It was. But I think the best part about it, and this is actually to go back to showing that the rosters and the teams matter.
Right.
Is that we all thought Ohio State was going to be there in the end. And Ohio State was there in the end. Right. I think we both had, in our projections, we had some sort of combination of, in the Final Four, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Oregon. Now, the way the bracket is rolling out, obviously, Ohio State had to go through 2 of the other teams, and Georgia didn't win the Sugar Bowl. But Ohio State was still there in the very end. And Texas actually was one of the Final Four teams. In the past, we kind of knew what the Final Four was going to be. We could probably say, all right, we can get at least 3 of the 4 teams coming in the Final Four playoff. As it all played out, in our Final Four, 2 of the 4 were there. Would Penn State have probably made the 14 playoff? No. Would Notre Dame have made the 14 playoff? I think the committee probably would have left them out because that lost to NIU. And it just sort of, hey, the 12-team playoff did what it kept all the fan bases engaged. It gave us a gauntlet at the end of the year where teams could actually develop depth, play through it, so maybe handle some injuries a little bit different. I can guarantee you right now, looking back at the year, there were probably players who, if needed, would have probably played more snaps or had to play games. But because of the longevity of the season or a playoff, path on the rise, they were held out or played down less because they were needed more in December than they were in October.
So, Fresh, you want to see something crazy? I have my notebook here with me, and this is from August. And I haven't looked at this since. I went back to flip to see if I have it here, and I have this written in pen. I have my 12-team playoff projection from there. Here's my field. Here's my Final Four. My Final Four was Ohio State, Oregon, UGA, and Texas. That's my Final Four. But here's the crazy thing. I wrote out the field how I thought it would lie. I had Ohio State getting a bye. Wrong on that part. In round 1, I had Ohio State playing Notre Dame. In round 2, I had Ohio State playing Oregon. And in the national title game, I had Ohio State playing Texas. So I actually, and again, there we go. For people who don't believe me, that was written down there and penned. I have it there. I think I didn't even realize
hopefully no banker will work passwords you read shut up on the screen. It's all just, brackets and confidential information.
No, this is all completely just my chicken scratching all my notes from there.
I'm joking.
Right. But again, I look at this and I go, we were fairly close with a lot of these things. You take a look at some of the teams that we had on the outside looking in. I think I missed the mark on Utah pretty bad. I thought Utah would be much better than what
I think everybody picked, who had Oklahoma State or Utah.
Florida State.
Florida State. Like, those were all, I mean, look,
I Boise making the field though.
We all can say we missed on them, but the players and the coaching staffs on those 3 respective programs, they missed. None of them. It's not like they came back with no talent. They had some issues and they dropped the ball, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. Fresh, this was a great national title for me, man. And I still, these guys will go down as legends, especially a guy like Jack Sawyer. What he has done for the program, and you take a look at what JTT's done for this program, I'm ecstatic to see another year of Jeremiah Smith. I can't explain the joy and happiness, though, that I had as I'm watching that. Again, it's been a roller coaster. You're right. 2 months, it's been a roller coaster of emotion. And again, maybe in the grand scheme of things, you're right. Maybe rivalry games don't mean as much in the grand scheme of things. But on that weekend in November, I was not in a good place
as a
fan.
Well, no, you weren't. But as a caveat, I think the rivalries are going to matter more to the underdog team, because they're trying to keep their rival who has a chance at the playoff out, or to be that one team that beat them. Because look, now Michigan, all those Michigan fans, David Portnoy and all of them are yapping, hey, well, we beat the national champions 13-10 in their house. We planted a flag on their place, or like if Georgia Tech had beaten Georgia in that 8 overtime, 9 overtime thriller that Friday night on Black Friday, that would put the real pressure on Georgia to win the SEC championship, where they probably wouldn't have made the playoff. And you had that, like, hey, our victory that night kept the Dogs from potentially making the playoff. That's when they're going to hang their hat on. So in those situations, the underdog in that rivalry game of being the little brother or whatever is going to mean something. The older brother, they're going to be like, all right, we should survive this game because we want to make it. Our goals are already on December, keeping our players healthy. And that's where, how do they get up for that rivalry? Where's that fire come from? If my mind's already on, I'm prepared for a conference championship, or I'm prepared for having a home, first round playoff game on December 20th or 21st. Why do I care about this rivalry? I have to get myself internally remotivated to play in this game. And it's a thing that I was, talking with our buddy Drew about when we were in Vegas for a wild card weekend in the NFL. With the transfer portal and guys moving around a lot more often, and I actually think the transfer portal is a bigger pain point to roster, continuity than it is NIL. But how many guys on that roster are actually from the state of Ohio? It's 51% of the roster, maybe 55%. It's not like back in the day. I'm just guessing at the math, but it's not what in the back in the day, in the 80s, the 70s, even the 90s, where that roster from those universities, you were 90% or 85% from your home state. And kids had grown up in those rivalries, grown up in that, they knew what they were getting themselves into. Now with the transfer portal, like Will Howard and Judkins, amazing players. One came from Kansas State, one came from Ole Miss. How are they feeling that fire to go beat Michigan? They were there to win a national championship. Their focus was on a lot bigger than beating Michigan. And at some point, how do you have to keep energizing that rivalry? I'm obviously using the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, but Auburn, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, USC, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Florida State. Like, if you start having all these guys coming in, they're not born in those rivalries. And that's going to also take a hit, where my goal is to win a national championship. If I'm coming to the portal, I'm here to win a natty or win a conference title, have a ring. This is rivalry just a game to me. And I think that is also going to play to an impact down the road of where's the personal buy-in on rivalry week to truly be invested. It's going to be much more of a fan perspective, like the NFL, where Eagles and Cowboys fans, they hate each other. There's some guys on those rosters that might not like each other, but overall they're like, hey, I'll see you in Cabo in 3 weeks. We'll hang out.
Right.
The player hatred, I use that term maybe loosely, but is that going to rescind because the kids aren't in that environment from the very young age all the way up, and they're kind of mercenaries coming in to win natties, and their minds are in a different mindset of I'm winning a trophy, not a rivalry game per se. So we'll see how that plays out in the future as the transfer portal continues to evolve and players continue to keep making those moves.
Yeah, I think we're in a period right now where I think eventually they'll get a hold of all that stuff, and you'll see things maybe shift and change a little bit. I don't think it's going away by any means, but I think that it'll be maybe a little more regulated, where again you jump in once or
I think a one-time thing has to happen, or you have to stay. Like the portal, the NIL right now, we already know with some legal legislation of you have to have an X amount of being used on all these sports and divvying it up equally. You know what's going to happen with that ruling? We're going to go back to kids getting bags on the side. Kids are still going to get paid one way or another. It's going to be on the front or on the back end. But the transfer portal of every year, I'm jumping in the portal. Every year, I'm going to the portal. Kids are transferring 3, 4, 5 times, getting 5, 6, 7 years of eligibility. And I think we're starting to cycle that 2020 COVID year stuff. But there has to be some sort of restriction on unrestricted transferring. That has to become a thing. There's kids that have been like 4 or 5 programs. So we're calling them sweatsuit kids because they have a sweatsuit, a travel suit, travel joggers from 10 different programs.
Right. I think one of the things I still like my plan the best that I've come up with out of all of them is that
I want you to have a plan one time that you came up with and you hate. Someone needs to have a plan that they actually hate.
I can create
Of course,
something
you
I hate. I can create a
plan that you
plan.
hate.
Yeah, I can create a plan that I hate. That's pretty easy. I can do that in a real quick.
I'm joking. I'm joking on your self-serving. Oh, that's my plan. I love it.
No, I do. But again, I put it out there before. I think you tier the revenue payment for freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year. You want to jump into the portal after your sophomore year, that's great. You don't jump in and start at your new school at your junior year. You jump in as where you go all the way back to the freshman payout. Is it worth it to you? If it's worth it, then jump in and go. The only exception I always say is, though, like the coach's leaving thing. If your coach leaves, I'm totally 100% cool. Like if I've committed to a program for 2 years and I came to you and you're out and you're either fired or you went off to the NFL, like you can leave as much as you want. All bets are off then. I think you can go then. I'm totally fine with that.
And back to your comments there, like our prime example. Obviously, I'm a Georgia fan. You're an Ohio State fan. A recent player, Damon Wilson Jr., put himself in the portal. He was on track to be the starting basic edge rusher for the Dogs. And he already had shown some prowess, really getting in behind Jalen Walker and Michael Williams and getting that rotation and making the play. He puts himself in the portal. Rumors are he's going to Ohio State. And out of nowhere, he's going to Missouri. And it makes you sort of sit back. You're like, you were going to be a starter at Georgia, probably a starter at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
What does Missouri have to offer you? And where are you going to be getting any playing, more playing time or being much more of an impact position outside of they are filling that bank account? Good to you, get your money while you can. But at some point you're like, I mean, what was the offer to leave Georgia, number one, when you're about to be the starter? It had nothing about playing time or not even go to Ohio State, but you were going to Missouri, who, I mean, that defense last year, 2 years ago was great because they had a lot of veterans, but you're like, that's the location? That's the program you're going to?
Yeah.
Okay. Congratulations, fine. But that money must have been really worth it to really, jump past those other two premium programs in the nation.
Yeah. Fresh, we'll see. We'll go on, and we got enough to talk. We got enough of this stuff to talk about over the offseason, fix everything and all the issues. But for the time being, Ohio State is national champions again. I'm loving every minute of it. I am so excited. I've been looking at all sorts of websites of what shirts I'm going to order, what have you, because you know what? At the end of the day, the trophy is in Columbus.
Tell you right now, Seth, because as someone who's done it, go on the Columbus Dispatches. I believe that's the newspaper.
Yeah.
Order today's newspaper. Buy it. And you have the cover, have the front page, and then have that front page framed. That's a cheaper treasure than going on Fanatics and having them send you something that's misspelled.
Oh yeah, I do have. I have my two Cavs Cavs NBA Finals papers framed up there.
They look so great, and they're perfectly done. It's really cool.
Yeah. So, well, folks, just because the college football season's over does not mean we're stopping. We got more content coming your way, and we're starting to work towards one of our favorite episodes that we're going to join. We're going to be joined by some guests to do a full first round mock draft. We're going to talk a little bit NFL football coming later on this week. We're going to talk a little bit about the NFC, AFC title games, I think maybe, or we're going to talk Super Bowl. Then we're going to do a full first round mock draft and see how many of these Ohio State players wind up in that mock draft. I'm excited to see that. Can't wait for that part. Yeah, just a couple. And stick with us the whole way. Like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. Make sure to check it out, SpinableSports.com, because the Irrational Confidence Podcast is part of SpinableSports.com. Fresh, that's all I got. Go Buckeyes. This has been an amazing run, amazing January, December. I don't know what month we're in now. We're going there. I'm just having a really good time. I'm going to be a little obnoxious for a few months here.
You're going to start being obnoxious? Okay, well, that's gonna be new for me. Hey, folks, we're in Jacksonville, Florida. It might snow tomorrow morning. We're already dealing with some craziness with Ohio State winning national championship and the entire South under a snowstorm. Something's going on in this world that's not actually good. Check out SpinableSports.com for all the draft content. Hit us up for us move through the draft and into 2025 football season. Can't believe we're 200 something days away, but it'll be before we know it. Enjoy every second of it. Enjoy all the draft combine stuff, all the Senior Bowl stuff, all of those. Anytime you can get football on, hit it up. And we'll have those NFL playoff episodes to you here real soon. SpinableSports.com, Spinable Sports YouTube channel. Hit us up here, subscribe, spread the word, spread the love, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.